Welcome to your dose of Did You Know? And today with me, I am blessed to have my good friend all the way across the country, but virtual is everything nowadays, Mr. Mike Flynn. How are you today, Mike?
Well, it's interesting. We're at the heart of the coronavirus center, and we're not going out a lot.
You
So
are stuck. So
this,
look, you get this is good stuff. You get a little smiley face outside of your four walls
oh, I know this is really a cool intrusion in the. So
into a
how are you?
I am doing great. And to let the rest of the world, this is going to be a small snippet of Mike, because I believe you are a legend in your own right in the world that you come from. But you were, 24 years, the editor and publisher of the Puget Sound Business Journal. I mean, that
Business
was
Journal.
one little thing you did, right?
Yeah, and then 20 years before that with United Press International,
Yeah. So when I
a
say,
true career person.
yes, when I say you are a legend, you kind of are a legend. You unofficially retired in 2006. I say unofficially because you still do a weekly column. You are still running, networking, consulting, doing everything that you've always done. So I don't really know where that word retire comes in, actually.
Well, in fact, a good friend of mine, the late friend who was the CEO of a company at my retirement party, said, "I can't imagine you being retired, Mike." And I said, "Well, Herb, you have to understand there's different ways to retire. You can take your car into Costco, and when you get a new set of wheels on, you emerge retired." So I said, "That's me."
That is you. Because funny story, we kind of met through a mutual friend, and I had to run to keep up with this man. Now, you're going to have a birthday soon. I won't tell everybody your birthday, but you are having a birthday soon. And when I say he runs, he literally runs. He was like, not just is your mind sharp, but your body's still sharp. I love it. I love your energy.
I told people I'm going to be 80, and I'm really excited about it because next fall, when I run on the World Senior Games, I'll be in the youngest group, 80 to 84. And so I should be back in the last time I was at sixth place, and that wasn't very good. So I need to get back up.
Well, you're definitely doing your thing. And everybody out there that's stuck at home, he told me his routine. He's still doing it, a little modified, but you're still getting that body moving. I love it.
So
Go ahead.
what are we talking about today?
Today, that's what I was going to jump into. You have a very good friend that you have told me stories about, Joe Gallo, and there is, a special on April 30th. We have the 45th anniversary, am I right, of the fall of Saigon coming?
Yeah, the
And
helicopters that people remember took off on April 30th of 1975.
yeah, yeah.
And that
And
was the end of it.
that was that.
And all the men who came home and women were kind of rejected and virtually spit upon for the fact they had fought in this ugly war that nobody cared about. And so in 2003, the Defense Department decided, for whatever reason, that it was time to say thank you 50 years later or 40 years later to the men who fought there and the women. So they hired Joe Galloway, who was kind of one of the most prominent Vietnam reporters. He worked for United Press International, as I did, and that's why we knew each other. Except I was an executive in the U.S. and he was a soldier in Vietnam. And I wouldn't trade places with him, but he might have traded places with me. But, anyway, so I learned a lot of history from Joe because the most important battle of the Vietnam War was in November of 1965 at Ai Drang Valley, when the U.S. Army met for the first time the regular forces of the North Vietnamese accidentally in a place called the Ai Drang Valley. And in 4 days of fighting, the North Vietnamese lost 2,500 dead, and the U.S. only lost about 320. But it was clear to U.S. leadership the American public would not stand for losing 300 American soldiers in a 4-day period again,
Yeah.
and not repeatedly. So actually, LBJ, President Johnson, dispatched his defense secretary to go to Vietnam and say, what the heck was this? And so Robert McNamara met with the ambassador to Vietnam, the commanding officer general, and the commanding officer of the battle, and came away with the realization, and he told Johnson, no matter what we do, we can't win there. And Johnson, when he got back, said, are you telling me there's nothing I can do to win in this place? And he said, no, we can elevate to 500,000 and lose 50,000 men, but the North Vietnamese can afford to lose way more than we can. And so we can't beat them because they can lose more people than we can without upsetting their populace. So at that point, they spent 4 days, and Joe likes to talk about, he hated Johnson with a passion, that they spent 4 days trying to decide what to do, and they didn't spend 2 seconds on maybe getting out. All they talked about was, okay, how do we go about elevating to 500,000 and losing 50,000? Yeah. Anyway, so Joe was singled out by the Defense Department in 2013 to go around the country and do interviews with veterans and do their stories and basically thank them decades later for what they did, and create CDs or DVDs that could be sent to the grade schools so kids would come to understand about it. So every year since then, he's done a total of 700 interviews now. He does 2-hour interviews with people around the country. And I got him to Seattle on a couple of occasions. It was interesting to listen in to his conversations. But the fact is that they would do that is important to say to the men and women who fought in Vietnam, we do appreciate it. Yes. Joe's way of singling out in his unique fashion, he said, people hated their sons and daughters because they hated the war. Now, why would they do that? And that's the way it was, but nobody frames it that eloquently.
Right. Well, was he there during that 4-day period you spoke about when we had that loss, the loss of all those men in 4 days? Was Joe over there at that time?
Oh, yeah. No, he was at the Battle of Hai Drang. He was the only soldier there. And he had his camera, and he told me that the commanding officer came by, flipped a machine gun at him, and he said, throw away that damn camera. I don't need a guy with a camera. I need a guy with a machine gun. And during the course of the battle, he became a soldier. In fact, he won a star for rescuing 2 of the wounded veterans by running out to get them out of the field. And I have a number of contacts because of that, but one guy who lives near here is a guy named Bruce Crandall, who was a Medal of Honor winner, who flew his helicopter, he and his wingman, Too Tall Jones. Too Tall Jones was called that because he was too tall to actually get in, but he made his way into the helicopter field. They went in 19 times to this death zone to rescue wounded people and drop off supplies. And the amusing thing is Bruce Crandall's son is a friend of mine in Seattle, and his name is Steve. And when I saw the movie, I said to Steve, so did your dad see the movie? And he said, oh yeah, sure. And I said, what did he say? And he said, well, it was mostly accurate except for one scene. And the scene was what happened with that helicopter drop zone was in the Vietnam era, there was a helicopter squadrons that went around to rescue. They flew in groups and to rescue people and drop supplies. But in this case, the commanding officer said, I ain't sending my guys there because it's a death zone. We won't get out. So instead of that, Bruce and Too Tall made 19 trips into this death zone. And so when Bruce got back to Saigon, apparently, the commanding officer came running up to him, very upset. He said, you tried to get my guys killed. And Bruce pulled out his gun and aimed it at this officer, and Bruce's troops wrestled him down and took the pistol away. So, because he was going to shoot him. And so I said to Steve, so your dad said it was pretty accurate? And he said, yeah, except for one scene. And I said, what was that? And he said, remember when he pointed the gun at the helicopter commander? I said, yeah. He said, he told me he wasn't pointed at his chest. So, yeah.
A slight redo. And what was that movie again? Tell me the name of that movie again.
Say again?
What was the name of that movie you were referencing?
Oh, We Were Soldiers Once, which was from the book We Were Soldiers Once and Young.
Mm.
And We Were Soldiers was a very well done movie, and it was true to the plot. It wasn't made up Hollywood style. And I remember seeing a public television video of making the movie, and Joe was riding around with a cigar in his mouth in the back of a Jeep looking like some sort of a movie person.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
he had a good time.
So tell me, did he ever talk about why he went there? Like, was he forced to go and do this reporting? Like, I'm so curious of his mindset of.
No, what happened in the Vietnam era, and I only know this from friends of mine because I had a wife and 2 kids, so I really wasn't interested in going, is a lot of single people, men and women, said, this is my war, and I got to go cover it if they were reporters. So a lot of them found a way to get there. And in fact, another friend of mine, she died about a month and a half ago, was named Tracy Wood. And she and I were political writers in the early 70s at the same time, she in Sacramento and I in Olympia. So we stayed close after that. But she was a reporter, and she told me, I was 26, and I said, this is my war, I got to go. So she wangled her way to New York to be in the UPI office in New York so she could lobby to go over. And she told me her boss said, no, we're not sending women over there. And fortunately, his 2 bosses, she had said, yes, we are. They have the same rights, and they'll be just as good as anybody else. So UPI probably had the neatest array of women reporters along with the men. They made a name for themselves, a woman named.
Wow. They kind of like forged the way. That's, I never knew that.
They forced their way over there.
Yeah. Good for them. But, Joe, he just didn't stop there. Now, how long was he in Vietnam? How long did he go over and come back? How do you know how long he was there reporting? Joe Galloway.
Oh, he had 3 tours there.
3 tours.
So he arrived there in spring of 1965. And 7 months later was the Battle of Idrain. And then he was there. He came not back home, but somewhere else in Asia. Then he went back to Vietnam. Then he went to another assignment and came back a 3rd time. So he was there until the end. He actually also was a reporter in Afghanistan and Iraq. Not with UPI, with U.S. News at that point. Okay. But he was in battles all the time. So
that
is an amazing guy. And I need to make sure that you have an opportunity when all of this stuff is over.
Yes.
He's not touring now. He's sitting home like everybody else. But if we're fortunate, he's supposed to be in Las Vegas to be honored the 3rd week of October. And I have a friend in Coachella Valley, Palm Desert, Palm Springs. So I said, I need you to help me do a celebration of Joe for what he's done, and invite every veteran who's in that area, whatever the area is, to come and be part of that. Mm-hmm. And that's where you'll fit in. Mm-hmm. I need to make sure you're there.
Well, absolutely. What a unique perspective, because he really is. He's living the life of the soldier, but he's looking at it from the outside perspective, even though he's in the middle of it. And then he comes back and he's still creating news and still creating value and understanding to this world, because a lot of us don't know what it's like, not just in Vietnam, but you said like in Afghanistan, we will never know really what it's like to be a soldier. I'll never know what my son went through as a Marine. I can look at it as a mother and, see that the outcome of it, but
does he talk to you much about that?
No, he doesn't really talk to me about it. Mostly he talks about just missing. He's lonely and sad. And it's very once in a while he'll talk about things, but hence my passion with our military and serving and creating community and things like this. But Joe has been doing this for a long time, his whole career. He has put
But
to
he's
this.
a communicator, don't forget. And communication is either you write it or you say it. And so
Yeah.
I did 2 interviews with him when he was here on one of his 2 stops. And he talked about, what was his name? Schwarzkopf.
Yeah.
General Schwarzkopf became his buddy because he viewed Joe as the kind of reporter that every soldier needed to know because he cared about them more than himself. Mm-hmm. And so he told me once, Hal Moore, the commanding officer, who was his longtime buddy and wrote both books with him, the first 2 books, got Alzheimer's. And so Joe went to see him even after he no longer recognized Joe. So he told me that one time, or he told the people at the audience in the interview that he said, General Schwarzkopf called me 2 weeks ago and he said, Joe, how's Hal? Hal was the commanding officer who was now deep into Alzheimer's. And he said, well, General, I go see him, but he doesn't know me anymore. And so Schwarzkopf said, and then Joe broke down as he told us. He said, Joe, come see me because in about 4 months, I won't know you either. He's an amazing guy.
He is an amazing guy. And before we wrap up with this segment, because I will be back with you another time to get into your brain and all the stories that you have. Can you tell everybody the story you told me about about Joe and the wall and was it Memorial Day he does this? Now I've forgotten the holiday, but he's touched you in so many ways. And that story about how he reads the name touched me.
Did I not talk here about his visit? Every Memorial Day he goes somewhere. And usually it's to be honored at some military base, but sometimes he's not being honored. So he goes to the wall in Washington, D.C. because he knew and remembers every one of the 295 soldiers from that battle who died and whose name is on the wall. And he said, I just go up and touch the wall and find each of their names and I cry.
Yeah. Like that gives me chills. It makes my heart well up. That's powerful. That's really powerful. I could
Talking to him is powerful. And so you're going to be doing that. You're going to be doing that.
Yeah. And I could see why he's touched you and I cannot, I'm really looking forward to October. Something will happen. It always does that. It's percolating out there. It'll all together. But Mike, thank you so much for coming on today. And
thank you for having me. That's very cool. And this is some more.
Exactly. And for everybody out there, if you want to, when I say Mike does, he does. He still writes his weekly columns, and it's on emikeflynn.com, correct?
That's my website. Very good. Thank you.
That's where I go to read them. So everybody else.
Nice to see you. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
And take care.